215 years ago, the old god of space was summoned. Humanity was under the impression that the age of world wars was over and that there was no need to be afraid of weapons of mass destruction. However, as we know now, many world powers create a Plan E in the face of annihilation. The leaders of the United States, United Kingdom, France, Russia, China, Saudi Arabia, Japan, Uganda, South Africa, and Brazil were all in contact with an ancient god, unbeknownst to their citizens. They each had strategies to steer their people off their trail. The US would intentionally create alien sightings. They got better at it by creating false government leaks to fuel the conspiracy theories in a different direction. Other countries that were less preventive didn't care about killing off anyone who knew. China would make people disappear and come up with two fake reasons why they did. One would be a mild official statement made to the public, and the other would be the real reason spread by government plants online. I recall a time in history when Russia started an entire civil war due to a major leak. Nonetheless, there was no civilian alive who knew. The leaders of each of these nations were instructed to create a circle of power on their soil. The ancient god continued to sow fear and distrust against the other nations, none of them knowing they were in contact with the same god. This was until one day when they were all convinced to harness their circle's power. There were strong tremors felt all across the world. Some entire cities were leveled. People along the coasts were the first to see it. A giant eldritch alien rising from the Pacific Ocean. Its presence appears humanoid but covered in what can only be described as non-human appendages. Tendrils burst from its face and let out a radioactive shockwave devastating all those who saw it. It leaped up and flew towards the moon, this action causing even more tremors and shockwaves across all of Earth. Those who managed to survive all of this saw a green light high in the sky that got closer and closer until it spread across the earth, creating a bright green veil over the sky which then seemed to dissipate. Humanity had become utterly weakened, but not extinct. The second phase of the attack started when the survivors saw flying abominations with dragon wings descend upon civilization, homing in on and killing all leaders and active soldiers. It was as if they knew the exact identity of them as they left everyone else alone and went straight to their targets. They were impervious to all our weapons, revealing a similar bright green veil around them every time they were hit. It is theorized that the world leaders had previously given up the identities of all of those who were killed to the ancient god, and that's how it was so formulaic. That wouldn't quite explain, though, how this was done to every single country when only a few had been in contact with it. About a week later, we saw the hordes of flying creatures ascend away from Earth. Before humanity could rebuild civilization, large metallic ships in the shape and size of castles descended onto each continent. It is rumored that the sole continent that they didn't descend upon was Australia. More average-sized humanoid aliens stepped out and began to massacre even more people as a demonstration of power, claiming that humanity has signed their rights away to the land and that they have inherited it. Before we knew it, an alien warlord and their army had begun to rule over each continent. Their biology and technology were so advanced that they appeared magic. They altered the landscape, creating desolate wastelands but also enchanted forests and swamps. These lords of the land also never seemed to age or die. Each time the people would rise up, they were met with death. And after each rebellion, it seemed that more and more eldritch horrors were added to the wastes. People have tried to send pleas for rescue, but every signal was stopped by the veil over the earth. Rockets with written messages would be stopped dead in their tracks. This, however, didn't stop wanderers of space from flying in and trying to liberate a few people. This never seemed to work. The lords of the land seemed omnipotent. They hoarded the wealth and the resources. I know little about the other warlords, but the one that lives here on my home continent called North America is named Lord Valakia. He takes the appearance of a pale, red-eyed man. He has long dark hair and the arms and legs of a dragon. He is always dressed in this Victorian regal attire. After taking over, he renamed his land mass to Kreska. He forces the citizens to pay tribute, and anybody who gets near his castle along the west coast becomes his plaything. They may be hunted for sport, or they may be invited for dinner before turning into an eternal servant of his. He has generals and concubines who establish the law for him across the rest of the continent. And nobody is allowed to leave, lest they be ripped apart by what lives in the water. Once a year he and his other lords journey to the moon. We assume they meet with the ancient god in his new moon city. That would explain the city lights we see up there. Humanity has entered its darkest age. The most we can do is live to the meager definition of the word and wait until some faction puts an end to this or makes a lord angry enough to wipe it off the face of the planet.